Hey everyone, this is Jay, and today we're going to install this Kraken G12 GPU mounting kit, as well as this Corsair H75 all-in-one cooler onto that Gigabyte RTX 2060 Super graphic card. Let's do this. Okay, so this is everything we're going to need for this project. You have the all-in-one cooler, that's the Corsair H75. It uses a 120 millimeter radiator and fan. Then you have the water block. Make sure it's the circular version, the Asetek water block, because some of the newer coolers uses a square one, which will not fit onto the Kraken G12. Alright, you have your thermal paste. This is Protronics. It's actually just from eBay. I just wanted something where it doesn't cost you 10 bucks for, tiny milligram. And let's see, you have the tools, screwdriver, mini tool, and this is completely optional. These are VRAM passive coolers. They're actually from a Raspberry Pi cooling kit. So we'll see if this will even fit onto underneath this mounting kit. Of course, we also have our graphic card, and I'm doing this video as I'm actually attempting this for the first time. So we're learning everything, or I'm learning everything as you guys are watching it. So let me clear out the table and then we'll get going. Alright, so this is what comes in the box. You have the face bracket, you have the fan, your screws, and the mounting bracket for the water block. Alright, so first step is removing the bracket off of your water block if you were using it. So just push these clips here, push them in, and take off, and take that one off as well. Alright, so we want to attach the fans facing the logo in this direction, because the graphic card will be right here. So we want this blowing onto the memory chips, and we will be using these screws. So I've got the Gigabyte RTX 2060 Super, and I'm gonna have to remove the stock cooling here, and we're gonna start by removing the back plate. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws, and then for this specific card, it doesn't look like I need to remove this plate because it's not attached to the back plate. But I will need to remove all of this, which looks like those are the screws for it. So let's do that. Alright, so we're going to be removing the back plate. You can see it's just a thin piece of, actually feels like plastic. Alright, so I removed 6 here and it comes off, but as you can see it's still attached somewhere underneath, and by looking through here it looks like it's attached to the PCB. There's a screw right there, so I can't just yank this off, but I can remove it from this side. So this will come off and detach from the front plate, like that. Back plate is still connected to the PCB, so meaning we have to remove the front part first. So we've done that. We can actually start pulling it off. Just have some good leverage, just like that. Okay, don't do it like that. I had to use a little bit of force, but it came up. I got lucky there, to be honest. It didn't break the whole thing. So lesson learned. Alright, so as you can see, the paste here is completely dry actually. I was getting about 86 degrees on this, and now I can see why. So this belongs here. This is actually for this memory chip here, but we're gonna remove those. Actually, we're gonna place it on here for safekeeping. I'm gonna try to see if my VRAM coolers will fit on here. So let me get rid of this, and then next is unplugging this. Next we're gonna remove this wire right here. Just pull up and shake it loose and get this one out of the way. So there we are. Backplate is still on there. We will need to remove that so that we can attach the brackets. So now we're going to remove the backplate. There's a couple of screws here. There's 1, 2, and there's actually 3. There we go. Backplate removed. Bare GPU. Now we are going to attach the brackets here so that we can fit the mounting kit. So the mounting kit is actually going to look like this. Oh, where are you? Like this? Okay, this makes no sense. Okay, so looks like I did mine the wrong way. Alright, so we have the bare GPU, and the first thing I notice is the location of the die. It's right there towards the center right, and I'm looking at the mounting kit, and it would have to be like this, but then the fan is all the way to the right. Because inside the case, it would look this way. So I guess I can flip mine around. Let's see if it'll fit in that direction. Nope. So this is probably the reason why on the NZXT site it says that the NZXT Kraken G12 is not compatible with a 2060. But let's make this happen. Alright, so this is eventually how it's going to look like inside the case, where everything is kind of shifted to the right. There's no fan blowing on these capacitors here. So we'll see how it works. I just want to double check to make sure that it will actually fit inside my case. So this is about give or take 11 inches. And 11 inches in my case looks like it'll work. So we'll see, because I also need to have the radiator in there. We'll give this a try. So before we even get started with the brackets, I want to clean up the paste here. And rubbing alcohol is a rare commodity nowadays, so I'm going to use good old-fashioned nail polish remover. So just grab a piece of cotton ball or cotton pad, and I'm going to drench it a little bit, and just tap it on here till everything disappears. Make sure not to apply the liquid directly on the die, and for these hard to reach spots you can use Q-tip. Alright, so I cleaned it off. There's still a little residue left, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. Next is mounting the bracket. So it comes with 2 sets of these, and you got the letter A for AMD, letter N for NVIDIA, and lo and behold, and the NVIDIA bracket does not line up, but the AMD one does. So we will be using that. Alright, I'm actually going to attempt to place these brackets while the back plate is attached. And if I don't redo this part of the video, that means this can actually work. I noticed there's a little area here that juts out, but let's see if we have clearance for it. Alright, so now I'm gonna place the bracket on here and then use the provided screws to screw it on the back, and then I'm gonna attach the back plate here using the screws on the front side here. And I noticed that the holes here do not line up completely, so we will see if we can make this work. Alright, short of bending these brackets, I think there's enough clearance to pull this off. So let's give it a try. Alright, so I ran into another issue here. The holes for this bracket do not also perfectly line up with the holes on the PCB. So another moment of do at your own risk. I'm gonna bend this a little bit inward so that it matches properly. So this is a view of how it looks now. As you can see, there's the hole at the bottom, but look at the top, you can see part of the outer part of the screw hole. So we are gonna have to fix this. I'm gonna bend this slightly in. If you're gonna do this, don't do anything to your graphic card. Do any mods to the Kraken G12, not your graphic card. So in, and that was very slight, and very effective clearance for the hole, but now I have to keep doing it so that it will at least rest on there without any issues. So alright, so I'm committing to it. There goes my refund for the bracket, but that's fine. Where's the other one? So I'm just gonna make sure that they both fit evenly. Alright, so I have the screw here. Make sure you put the washer on there. This will go on the other side like this with another washer, and we're gonna place it on there and screw it down. Just a little bit for now, and same deal on the other side. Washer, screw. Alright, so final product for the first half of the bracket, and I'm already sweating. So I'll complete this side and then we'll see how it looks. Alright, so for the other half, it seems like I have enough clearance so I can use my passive coolers over the RAM. It is on 3M tape, so you want to give it a good push. It doesn't fall off. Alright, so connect this. Where's my other washer? Alright, so we got our final product here. Looks like everything will line up properly with the bracket. So we'll get to that in a second. Alright, next we're going to put some thermal paste on the GPU die. This is Protronics, And we're gonna drench this guy in thermal paste. So that looks like it's enough actually. If you feel like there's too much, you can always just remove it. Alright, we got the thermal paste on there. I looked this up because I got a little scared. It looked, it's non-drying and not electrically conducive, meaning your little capacitors here on the side should be safe even if it leaks out. But even then, we don't want that. Alright, so I'm gonna mount the back plate back on here. Alright, so now we're gonna connect the fan onto the PCB. Just like that, and then these things will make sure that the fan does not actually touch the PCB, but it looks like it's not going to anyway because of the back plate here, so I may not need that. We'll see. So this is a 3-pin, and the board has 4. It will not connect. It'll not work. Alright, so snag number 3, or maybe it's 4, because 3 I believe will be aligning the holes onto this, so I may have to warp the plate a little bit, but I'm not worried about that. The fan connector here is 3 pins. The connector on the PCB is 4. Workaround would be to make sure that this is connected. To make sure that the fan is running, I'll most likely have to connect this onto the motherboard, unless I can find a 3-pin to 4-pin adapter. That sounds like another Amazon run, but we're trying to complete this today. So we'll worry about that later on. Let me just place the bracket on and then the water block. Alright, so we're gonna put this here. I'm gonna put one of these to make sure that there's clearance between the bracket and the PCB, and I see another space right here where I can attach it. Place it here and align this, push down. Alright, so it's the inner holes that'll match the bracket. Remember, we did warp these things a little bit, so we're gonna have to work with making sure that they are actually aligned too. Might be necessary to just have 2 of these on here. Alright, so I'm only able to connect 2 of these screws, but I want to make sure that there's a good rigid connection here. So what I'm gonna do is zip tie this through the screw hole. This will only work if you have zip ties on hand, which they actually do provide. So it's part of it, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't meant for this. Ta-da! Okay, so we've gone from mounting kit to modding it, so I don't want to stop now. So I'm gonna run this in this direction, kind of hide it underneath here. So I'm going to mount it this way, and okay, I'm gonna have to unscrew this a little bit, guys. So it looks like this should have been done before completely tightening this. Alright, so learn from my mistake, mount it before you screw down, because I already zip tied too, so that made it a lot worse. So tighten it down. Alright, so now I just have to find somewhere to connect these two wires. Pretty sure my motherboard has them. Alright, as you can see inside, there is full-on contact with the water block and the die on the unit. Let's pop this into the system and let's see if it actually fits. One last thing is, so you have zip ties, you can actually route this tubing here and then here and then zip tie them, but don't over tighten because you need this to have water flow. Alright guys, that was a workout. So as you can see, in my system I have the radiator here. I tried placing it on the front, but this the card would not allow for much space up front here, so it's kind of skewed a little bit, the tube. Right now I'm running Unigine Valley, so we're doing a benchmark, and on your screen you can see that this is my previous run before the water cooling unit. You can see the minimum temperature, the ambient temperature on the graphic card was 39 degrees Celsius, and while running it was at as high as 86 degrees. In fairness, I just noticed that the fan on it was only at 65%, so it could have been a lot better, but I do notice that this card runs hot. And alright, so far everything seems to be running smoothly. I'm running Unigine Valley, the benchmark again, so that I can get a good idea of the temperatures with the all-in-one cooling system. And so far everything looks smooth, so we'll just wait for this and see how it goes. Alright, so with the water cooling unit, we can see that our minimum was 35 degrees Celsius, so ambient temperature is already better, and then temperature while running, maximum reached 75, so that's 10 degrees less or 11 degrees less than the other maximum on air cooling, which is a big win, to be honest. That means that the system can actually push itself harder, and we may be able to do even more overclocking on the 2060 Super. Let me run 3D Mark Time Spy real quick, and then we'll see our score on there. Alright, so we have the case here. First, make sure your computer is turned off and unplugged. Alright, so I'm gonna change the location of the radiator. I'm actually gonna put it on the front here with the tubes along the side. I know the best case scenario would be to have it up top, but for this limited spacing, I'm gonna do it this way. In this case, this is the dark flash DLM22, by the way. This front bracket is for the fan, comes off, and you would screw the radiator on here, place it in, and then screw it on the sides. And remember, there are 3 wires we have to connect somewhere on the motherboard. They're all 3-hole pins, and we need to be able to find a way to connect it to the motherboard. Alright, so on this motherboard, this is the Aorus B450M, by the way, micro ATX. And on this specific board, there are 3 pins where I can connect the fans. So one is already being used up here. This is for the CPU. There's one along the side here. It says System 1 fan. And on the right side, System Fan 2. Alright, so since there are only 2 fan connectors on the motherboard that I can connect to, I found one of these. Luckily, it's a Y cable fan splitter. So this is 4-pin female to 2 4-pin males, but it should work with the 3-pin port from the fan. Alright, so the radiator fan I'm going to connect directly to the motherboard. Alright, there it is. Alright, next is the graphic card, and let me show you the graphic card again, because I made a slight change to it. And so as you can see, the water block, I shifted it so that the tubes are underneath. The tubes are not going to be taut. They will have a slight bend to it, but it won't have any kinks. So make sure it doesn't do that. And make sure that you put the radiator first if you're going to do this, so that the wires or the tubes are not in the way. And you'll also notice the VRAM passive coolers on the left side over the memory controller now. Alright, I'm going to grab the PSU cable up here so that it's not in the way. Just kind of tuck it in there for a second. And then the tubes, be careful with them. And you kind of have to wiggle this in a little bit. So this first, and as you can see, the tube is bending, so you have to be able to kind of push it down so that it is not causing any kinks. And then line up the graphic card on your PCIe slot. Push it in. Alright, so I'm going to screw in the graphic card. Push it as high as you can. And then lock it in place. Next, I'm going to connect the PCIe cable back on the graphic card. Alright, so I'm going to connect the 2 remaining wires using the splitter. Alright, so since I have 2 cables, I'm going to run one behind the case and one underneath the graphic card. Let me connect one of them now. Connect it to the motherboard, like so, and clean up the wire a little bit, and then this one will go to the back for the other wire. Alright, it's connected. Alright, so everything is set in place. I know I didn't show the installation of this with the radiator on the left, but I didn't want it to be too redundant. Let's boot this up and see some new benchmarks. Hi guys, so this is Miles, by the way. Our scores actually went up for TimeSpy 8367. The original score I had was, let's see, it was 7947. So it ran cooler, plus it was able to boost a bit better, so we got better scores. 31 degrees Celsius is our new ambient temperature, and then 64 is the max. Actually, the numbers changed little because I also changed it up. As you can see, I placed back my LED cooler, and right here is where I placed the radiator. So now the whole thing is a little sideways. I did have to unmount the water block because of the way the tube is set up. One last thing, remember these, which was optional? Well, it turns out that the memory chips and the memory controllers on the left side of the GPU right here was getting way too hot, and I noticed that on the stock cooler it is actually right here, it is actually touching the heatsink, so that means it was getting at least active cooling, because there's also a fan underneath right there, so it was getting cooled directly. Long story short, you need to be able to cool those memory controllers and what are they called, MOSFETs. Alright, so we're testing Unigen Valley again, and right now the max temperature, it's been running for a bit, is 62 degrees Celsius, so it looks like that's my new maximum temperature. Thanks for watching the video. Please click like if you like the video, and if you decide to buy these items, then I'll leave a link in the description. And he's just staring at himself on TV. Alright, so it looks like we're getting about 65 degrees as our new maximum over the, what was it, 75 earlier, so it's a lot better. And also the way the case is also set up looks a lot nicer compared to having the radiator right here on the back. I am gonna try to fit in that H100i that I showed you guys earlier, probably somewhere up here. And if you ever want to put a water cooling block on your GPU, well, as corny as it sounds, this is the way. Alright, say bye.